Thursday from Tallahassee.
I
Because
won't
it
be
is
here.
that.
I'll be in Turkey.
Oh, you'll be in Turkey. Okay, good. Well, we'll have to do something.
Yeah, even next week I'm driving to the airport for Green Room, so I'll be.
Well, we did that.
Yeah, but
Listen, we've had such fantastic guests, Eric. And we're so glad to have you. All right, great, Don.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Green Room. We have a very special guest. We have so much to talk about in the state of Florida, in the state of disarray of Florida, I believe. That's my personal opinion.
Introduce Eric Sarkisian, who is so well known amongst anybody that knows journalism in Florida, healthcare in Florida. I know Eric has told me that his favorite beat is the medical cannabis beat in Florida, right? Because it's so darn interesting. And
it is.
And we'll get there in a moment.
So much going on.
Thanks for joining us, Eric. And you're in Tallahassee at this point as we speak.
I am. I'm actually at the as we call the Canopy Bureau. It's the name of our neighborhood. When you're a journalist and you work from home, you just say you work at a bureau, and whatever your house is called, it automatically becomes that. So it's all fun and games too. Yeah, it's all fun and games if you're unless you're in a shady part of town or something.
Well, no, I mean, it's different. And listen, I just want to start out by telling you, and I know Ruta agrees with this. We respect our journalists. We need our journalists. You know, when I was setting, it up for you to be in the green room, I said, to you that Ruta and I utilize this as our own personal therapy every week. So when we get guests like you that can add into the honest, legitimate conversation about what's going on nationally here in Florida.
Like here in Florida, honestly, well, because we're national news every day. You hit the New York Times, the New York Post. Well, you name the journal, we're in there because Florida is such a.
I'll just nationally for a second, Eric, because I'm so interested in your perspective on it. Because we have the whole Dominion trial going on right now. That is basically calling out the big lie for what it is, for what it's always been.
Always.
And listen, Eric, I think you and I have discussed in the past. I'm also a communications journalism major myself as an undergrad. My dad was not going to let me go into journalism because, damn it, he needed a doctor in the family. So, I went to med school. But my point is, that you go all the way back to Marshall McLuhan. The media is the message. Okay, you look at George Orwell, 1984. I mean, to me, we're living it right now because Fox News has indoctrinated literally this portion of the country instilled in the big lies. Please, your perspective as a journalist, how do you swim against that?
The one thing that's actually, first of all, I want to thank you for the kind words that you had said about my work. The medical marijuana beat happens to be a passion of mine because it is the most fascinating to see how Republicans kind of are reacting to this. Which, if you remember, when voters legalized medical marijuana in 2016, 71% of the vote. So there's people on the right and left who are supporting this, and that puts them at a certain dance. In terms of my job. Politics and policy have always been married together, but when it's politics and certain issues that get married together, like healthcare, like education, once those things get in the way, I think almost everything is up for grabs. And I think like the current, like the DeSantis administration has sort of turned that world on its head in some respects. And I'm not playing the devil's advocate. I might get tomatoes thrown at me from my colleagues, but in some cases, there's been a trend where reporters make the stories too much about themselves and rather than helping people. So that is one area. I think Elon Musk had said he's not going to give journalists any special treatment. And at the end of the day, when our founding fathers put the press as a foundation of our country, everyone was supposed to be part of that reporter. Everyone could be. You don't need a license to do anything. So this is kind of a cataclysm of TV. Cable news hasn't helped this. I think journalists have kind of lost a little bit of the focus. And I think it was just an opportunity for political groups to come and just start launching these attacks and making that part of their platform. And people are listening because, it's very easy to blame journalists for problems that go on, like during the pandemic. I mean, as a doctor, how often as a doctor have we gone through, medical breakthroughs that completely obliterate what the previous precedent. That sort of happened during the pandemic, but because of, because of that whole, this conversation and all the vitriol surrounding the politics out of it, that's when people start saying, oh, the journalist got it wrong. The journalist got it wrong. The journalist got it wrong. So sometimes there's an old thing that they used to call during World War II and Vietnam War for news coverage, and it was called fog of war. There's certain things that you're only going to know for a certain time until you learn more about it. It's just all you have to report on. And I also think that today's consumer doesn't want to put up with the fog of war. They want it right, and they want it right then and there. And that's not easy too. So
but don't you think the only thing, and I agree with you that I think some journalists have lost their path. The only thing that I'm getting upset on is it truly, like, even the big networks, like you take the CNNs, the cable networks, the Fox, the MSNBCs, they've become political machines themselves. And I don't think, journalism, you can put a spin on anything, right? So you can sort of gear what your messaging is. And I think that's kind of where, like, a lot of people started losing a little bit of faith, because it's just become the networks aren't reporting the news necessarily. They're reporting their agenda of their network and what they stand for more so. Because, like, if you look at, and I don't watch Fox that often, but sometimes I turn on just because I want to see their opinions, and everybody has their agenda. CNN has theirs, MSNBC has theirs, they all have theirs. And I think it kind of does a disservice to the journalist, because eventually you're like, oh, well, whoever's reporting from CNN, that their stand is, pro this, and, it's not even, they don't even take, I don't think they give proper credentials back to the journalists anymore, because I think the journalists are putting political spins on, like, opinions.
We need to share truth.
Yeah,
We need to share truth. And listen, what's going on with history here in Florida. Eric, I know you're originally a Floridian, went to college here in Florida and all that, or not so?
No, I grew up outside Detroit, and I went to high school. I graduated high school, and then I ended up going to I graduated from the University of Arizona. To be candid with you, my dad was also a physician. He retired in '98 because he got sick of all of the things that I'm sure you were aware of, Dr. Gordon. And he moved he moved to Tucson and said, if you want me to pay for your school, you're coming here. So off I went.
He's beautiful.
Yeah,
for sure. But my point is, the history, listen, when I grew up, and I speak to this and I laugh about it, it was in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and discovered America, and that was the Western European teaching, right, so to speak, that we got. But slavery was included, and there were things, all of it, and we learned about the marches, in Alabama and Rosa Parks, on the bus. And those are critical things. And I just, here in Florida, I shake my head at it. And I know it's not the medical beat necessarily, but the education beat. But here we are in Sarasota with New College, of course, and what's going on there, which we've had shows on. Governor DeSantis, I know you followed it, Eric, was here literally in Venice 2 days ago, launching his book tour and ostensibly his soft, perhaps, launch candidacy for the presidency. But the agenda, let's go into Tallahassee, because when does session start actually, Eric? When do they actually sign in?
The big day is on Tuesday.
The big day is on Tuesday, right?
The big day. And all of the pomp and circumstance, and then they'll jump right into committee meetings in the afternoon.
Sure. And people that follow the Green Room closely know that Don uses various backgrounds. The one for the State House this year has the storm clouds, brewing. That was my suggestion, as usual. Yeah. But tell us what you expect in Tallahassee this year, Eric, and I'll just kind of open it up to you, because, we'll get into the cannabis space, which I'll be honest with you, I want to keep as far away from Tallahassee right now as I can, because as you alluded to, even though we know it's not the case, it's not red and blue in cannabis, it's green. We have as many conservatives in our practice as we do have liberals, believe me when I tell you. So to me, we get dunked into that culture war battle on the negative side, and that's a shame. So I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of hoping they kind of don't pay any attention to us at all. So I'm just going to open it up to you. What do you expect to see up there in light of what's been going on leading up to the session?
So the Governor DeSantis has said that this session is going to be gangbusters. That's how he's described it. And if you've seen, I think we've
gangbusters.
We've had at least 5 special legislative sessions, and
not Oath Keepers. Wait, hang on, not Oath Keepers gang, or what's the other one? Proud Boys.
Oh, probably.
Yeah.
We're not talking about those gangs. We're not talking about busting up those gangs.
No.
I'm kidding you.
But-
Chris Wheeler is the champion for the Proud Boys.
And right here in Sarasota County, of course. So gangbusters, please.
Yeah,
proceed.
I
apologize.
think gangbusters also might tie to the fact that I believe the Republicans have super majorities in both chambers, even with the House losing Representative Harding to his resignation due to the indictment he's facing. So I think he's expecting to have a very good year for himself. He's got some policies he wants to get through. Education is going to continue to be a very wide lane that the legislature is going to continue to head on with different reforms there, especially where he got with New College. And with former House Speaker Richard Corcoran now, appointed to be at the helm of that. That's also going to be interesting. Corcoran, if you remember him when he was in the House or leading the House, he was a guy that would come up with new different ideas, and it's there's a reason why Governor DeSantis likes him, because he's also a guy that likes new ideas as well. In the way of medical marijuana, obviously we have some of the bills that are out there. One that I find interesting that I'd like to see how it follows suit is there's a bill by Chair Gail Harrell. It's a committee bill, and it actually would specify that medical marijuana is considered as some of the prohibited substances that can be used in a recovery home, even if you have a card.
Wow.
That to me,
really?
now for those of us who've been following this industry for years and even been around for decades. It's the confusion of that. Obviously, there's a lot of people out there who I know of who are patients who are using marijuana because they no longer have to use oxys or
Exactly. They go off the
or
prescription meds.
yeah. I mean, what's the one that I know one doctor that he's a friend in recovery. He no longer uses trazodone because his doctor had told him that, and there's studies that show that could cause problems down the road. Which trazodone is a safer version to help get you to sleep. That bill kind of like signifies where the legislature, I think, is right now. I mean, I'm saying that because Senator Harrell she's a senior member of the chamber. She has the ear of the Senate President Pasadomo. But I don't know if that bill likely will get traction. I'm questioning whether it actually make it across the finish line. But that should be kind of the litmus test to show you, like, there's some other bills that are out there filed by Polsky and even Broder and Roach, that those bills might not have as much, might not have much of a chance this year. Is that a good thing? Maybe. A lot of people are okay with it. A lot of people are okay with the way that things are growing. I know that the Department of Health wanted $14.6 million to pretty much double the OMMU, the Office of Medical Marijuana Use, because they're anticipating the release of those 22 licenses that have been sitting there for months and months and months and months. That's going to be a big deal, I think, for the industry in terms of growing pains and just quality control. I think one of the things that DOH has done, they really ramped up their testing and whatnot. They're doing more testing on edibles. One thing that I've heard
more everything on everything, Eric, because they're pulling records and charts now, and
their focus, their hyper focus is on cannabis, which is already fairly regulated. And I agree, keep doing it, and there's no problem with that. But when we spoke about, like, the Delta 8s and 10s, that's unregulated, and those are posing so much danger. And then you have these committees like at the state level, like 2 weeks.
I don't have any understanding at all.
They're like, that's not ours. It's the Department of Health, and they don't even care about the testing. They don't care about the labeling. They don't care that it's at every.
Listen, Eric was that director of the OMU Kimball's presentation, and saw pretty much what we saw, which weren't great answers about telehealth. Right. But I want to go back, Eric, to early on when you talk about Senator Harrell's bill. Mm-hmm. Her husband, of course, was a physician. May he rest in peace, because I know he passed, I think, a couple of years ago, I think, during session or after. But anyway, my point is, we had a great thing happen on the practice this week. A nurse, applying to Sarasota Memorial Hospital, printed off their new policy, which includes the usage of cannabis as medicine by their nurses, by their techs, by their housekeeping personnel. So they have adopted the recognition of cannabis with cardholder as patient.
in
And
a
that was
hospital.
huge, huge.
Sarasota too.
Yeah, that is
It
that
is,
is
it is
that is
huge.
significant. Yeah.
It is. And so we see it slowly happening,
And I
and
think it's gonna happen almost on an individual basis now, because I think like you're gonna have healthcare systems that are acknowledging it, because I think the healthcare industry does find value and they know patients are taking it. They know their employees are taking it. So
it's best codified. It's best codified. And, Congressman Stubbe, of course, from our district here, US Congressman Stubbe, if you follow that, Eric, you'll know that, he's been really integral at the VA level in
Mhm.
trying to codify the rights of veterans to not lose any of their disability, because of the usage of cannabis, right? And that's a great thing. It's the policy in the VA now, but he's fighting to make sure that it gets codified, and I give him credit, for that. So I want to give a shout out to Dara Cam, one of the other fantastic journalists also on the
She's
cannabis.
amazing. She's the best.
She is, and
I love
listen,
her, yeah.
she's the one, and we send her great healing on her leg, because I know it's still bugging her. She calls the governor's office the Plaza level, which is the reference in the green room. But when she was in the green room, I don't know, 5 weeks ago or whatever it was, she scared the heck out of us, Eric, by saying that we could actually see the 10% THC cap raise its head again, okay, if the conversation goes the wrong way up in Tallahassee. And Ruta has already alluded to it. Representative Roach has presented, and with other sponsors, a bill to bring back telehealth for recertification visits, which we're fully in support of. And in fact, I don't know if I sent you the one pager, but I'm happy to after the show if I haven't done it yet. The doctors actually have a 1-page modification to Representative Roach's bill where we want to make sure that it's actually tightened up. We want the offices to be in Florida. We want the patient to have to recertify with the practice that they're already in at a facility that has their medical records already via telehealth. So we don't want the fly by night, come in and listen. We can talk Veraheel in the green room because we've been honest about it. We know there's groups about the state that have been wildly out of bounds, suspended already by the state, but their doctors are still performing in that manner. We're waiting for somebody to take some action.
I know,
and Dara told, be it the OMU or the Board of Medicine. The OMU always plays it off on the Board of Medicine and says they're not the regulators of the doctors. So we always send them this and send them that, and who knows what gets done with it.
They are regulators of the companies that have the doctors under them, and they should actually take some action.
For sure.
Really
But Dara actually alluded to a certain, and these are her words, close, but maybe not exact, but the stench to a certain extent of, unfortunately, some of these bad actors in the state house and in the governor's office. And, she said that there may be some influence on that. Do you have any feeling about that or take on that? Are you fearful of really a negative attitude about what's going on? Or do you just think they're just uneducated because we get a whole new bunch of people coming in to each legislative session that really don't know anything about what we do?
Yeah. I think because we saw this a couple of years ago too, when we had a new round of people who were on the rather than Plaza level of the 4th floor of the Capitol. There are members who are come in and they've got ideas and there's platforms they want to jump on like marijuana, but it's all a question of whether the chamber, the presiding officer over the chamber wants to go along with that. And when you only have 60 days. There's certain issues that usually, like issues like marijuana, sort of fall off the side. I think there are threats that people will make. That's if that's part of the back and forth. At the end of the day, the two chambers will kind of negotiate with chits essentially. And sometimes marijuana is kind of one of those secondary chits that might go back and forth. Well, we're going to do this. Well, that's going to upset the Senate. We're going to do this. Okay, that's going to upset the House. And they'll kind of go back and forth. See, here are these threats, and they won't really pan out once the hanky drops on sine die. But I have not heard anything to indicate. I know that DeSantis is not a fan of he says he personally doesn't agree with recreational marijuana, but he also has voiced his support for the medical cannabis program too. So I just based on his political beliefs, he's as a libertarian, from what I understand, he pretty much doesn't really want to do anything in terms of regulation, in terms of changing it. He would actually, theoretically, he'd want less. I just haven't heard that be as big of an issue as some other things that are going on in there. His big issue that he did bring up was, was how much some of these companies are making, and that's why they upped the relicensure fee to 1.3 million, which, by the way, also sort of gets some of the folks that are holding on to these licenses to kind of, it's either, I guess, puff puff give, I guess is actually one way to put it.
Right. Well, the next round of licenses, of course, opens up April 24th through April 28th.
Mhm.
If you and I had a spare 164 grand lying around, then we could apply for a license, and then we could probably take about $1 million. How much do you think it would take with the lawyers and all that, Ruta, to put a group together right now? And you know why I joke about it, okay? Yes, it is. It probably takes $1 million to put a legitimate group together right now. Even to form your team.
Investors, yeah, you need.
No, you gotta form your team. You gotta, it's gotta be done right. Well, no, I'm just saying, just to form the team, and then another 20 million at least to build out your initial grow, this, that, whatever.
Just the logistics. Yeah.
Prediction, Eric, how many license applications do you think are going to come in during the window for the 22 ostensibly that may be available?
I'll say that the Department of Health in their legislative budget request anticipated like 150 applications.
Wow.
I would say that is right. Our industry is still in the phase of where these licenses are very lucrative. I believe, actually, I think Dara might have reported this while I was stuck in another issue of healthcare. And that was I believe that the license that was issued to the black farmers the pig food license has already been designated. Like someone's already purchasing that license.
Yeah, I think
Things
so too.
move so. The greatest example of like buying and selling these licenses is Sunburn, is Brady Kopp, who moved through this industry by helping to buy and sell licenses, and then he got enough that he could open his own dispensary. But that's
sort of big enough. He got to be a guest in the green room. We had Brady in about 8 weeks ago or so. Yeah. So you're right. I mean, he
did it as a business, and
now they're in downtown Sarasota, and right there on the front lines. Yeah.
And they're here in Tallahassee too, right? They're right in Midtown. They're in the old MedMed building that I'm sure you've seen coming down Thomasville Road. And he's getting a fan follow. He's doing things his way. I think he's the only one. He's the only grower out there. He's actually using dirt. That's one thing I heard. Correct me if I'm wrong. Not using like hydroponics and whatnot. But he's doing things kind of his way as an ode to his dad, who was obviously a key player in the industry before things got legalized somewhat.
But I think that raising. I think that raising
behind him.
Yeah, for sure. I think that raising of the every other year number to 1.3 million, Eric, plus the nature of cannabis business space right now, to the extent that safe banking, of course, didn't pass through in the lame duck, U.S. Congress. Stocks are down, I'm not so sure that there's all that much financing out there, and plus the $1.3 million, let's face it, to the bigger groups, I don't think is that big a deal, but to a flowery, a gold leaf, a sanctuary, the smaller ones, that 1.3 million is everything, so I'm interested to see what that number is going to be. I've heard some speculation it may be smaller than people had ever imagined it could be. On the other hand, it wouldn't surprise me to see 100 or 120 applicants because they are so darn, lucrative. But, it's interesting because you have to look at it on the other way with the restrictions that the state has on product right now. For example, one of the MMTCs had a great deal, $75 for an ounce of ground cannabis flower with a 15% THC ratio. And it was a good product. And for $75, a lot of patients would like to buy that as a base of use of their flower products, but they don't want to give up the purchasing of what they may believe is a better quality bud, quote unquote, type of product. So there are still restrictions in Florida. And I know that I was up in Tallahassee when they put down the dose cap restrictions and limits. So my point is we need to continue to educate each new round of legislators the best that we can, because we need to get into this Delta 8 issue, Eric. And, do you think, and the other, we call them rogue cannabinoids or, whatever. I'd like to get my CBD friends, and purveyors angry at me. What I want is a state-sponsored testing level where the state puts a stamp on any product before it hits the retail shelves, right? So anything that is sold as Delta 8 is legitimately Delta 8 without garbage and solvents and this and that. I maintain that the vast majority of Delta 8 in the state actually is at least half Delta 9. until they
Yeah.
start testing it, because it's probably cheaper to get Delta 9 oil out of Colorado or California. And now people are selling, listen to this, here in Sarasota, County, there's pain management doctors that sell Delta 9 gummies, okay, out of their office. Delta 9 gummies, stamped hemp derived, okay, and they won't let their patients into the medical cannabis program.
Which is crazy. I know, isn't that insane?
So
It's truly-
what's going on is unbelievable. And to me, with the arrow that the state being on us as a target and on the legitimate MMTCs as a target just fascinates me. Is there any hope at all to have a legitimate discussion about the hemp space here in Florida? Because I want my friends, my purveyors, to be able to sell legitimate product that's as safe and as tested as what my MMTC friends can do.
But what one of the big things that I began looking into this over the summer, and what sort of baffled me is that not many people were willing to talk about it at the time. I'd actually gone into a store just as a regular customer just to see how easy it was, and I was literally able to get a bag of gummies, and I wasn't carded or anything. I mean, I've heard rumors that they don't card people, or I believe that you only have to be 18. But yeah, so just to think about how easy that was compared to the process that a patient has to go through when they, that you have to put in your card 50 zillion times, and I think some dispensaries are actually asking for your regular state ID too to confirm. So again, there's that stench that you might be talking about. But I haven't heard anything about regulation except at the federal level. You have, they're now the Congress and federal agencies are now starting to look at, some of the dangers involved in this, because you're hearing, members of Congress who are saying, hey, this stuff claims it's marijuana, and anyone can walk in and get it. I'm not saying here in Florida. That was actually mentioned. So
Eric, when you see a big THC sign, out in front of your local smoke shop with Delta 8 there, okay, and also, okay, you go to a community festival, any farmers market these days, okay, and the legitimate CBD purveyor, I got it. And I say to them, please carry good quality CBC and CBG and CBN. And I know you know what those are, and our patients that always watch the Green Room know, but those are the other minor cannabinoids that have great usage in medicine. The Delta 8, 10, 6. Here's what bugs me about it, Eric, is that the O and the HHC and the P are ostensibly stronger than Delta 9.
Yeah.
So if the legislators would listen, they would know that actually there's a threat of stronger cannabinoids that could be available to people that don't know anything about them.
But you know what, the thing that gets me, they're selling gummies, right? How is the state always like, oh, you can't package, you can't have it friendly for kids to look at, yet that's okay. Like, what the heck? Like you're doing the opposite of what you're saying. You're saying don't package, don't sell, to minors, don't make it attractive for children. Yet you go to the farmer's market, like you said, and everybody can go and get those gummies anywhere they want.
You get 30 milligram smoothie.
Yeah,
okay, because they put Delta 9 oil in there, and it's by weight, this, that, whatever. It's crazy. But my understanding is that, now Ag Commissioner Simpson, there is no longer a medical marijuana advisory committee. Of course, that was under Commissioner Freed. It was dissolved, Eric. Never got a letter about it. Never got a notice about it. It was just so interesting, but I was proud to serve. I only wish that Ag Commissioner Simpson would reach out, to those of us that served on that committee. And it's so distressing to me that the OMU, of course, really has no interest in forming a committee, boots on the ground docs and research docs and patients and caregivers and veterans, the whole bit. But I'm going to be in Tallahassee in a couple weeks. On Thursday, Ruta is going to be on her way to Turkey.
I will be there already.
But maybe
it's a cool country. I've been. It's very cool.
I've been to Turkey, and we're going to Greece too. But Greece I've been to once, but Turkey never. So this is exciting.
Awesome. And I just came back from Panama City, so we have remote green rooms. I'll have to talk to Don about it, see if we can arrange it. But maybe I'll get you in person at the State House in the Rotunda or something like that, in for a short.
I'd love to.
A short update.
Yeah, I love talking with you about this stuff. Again, it's one of my favorite topics to cover here at Politico. So
just to wrap it up, Eric, thank you for advancing everything before I got to the state, and I mean it. And I love to give deference to those people that have really been out there doing, their thing long before I I'd like to say I picked up the ball at the 50-yard line, and Cleveland Browns fan that I am, have had plenty of hard hits, on the way. And listen, and I invite you into the clinic any and every day, of course, as you know. And Ruta and I are proud of what we do here. We're so far ahead of where we started 6 years ago. And it's things like the Sarasota Memorial Hospital policy, the fact we get referrals from the docs in the area all day, every day. And, we're able to offer a high quality adjunct and assist to people's health care in a very dicey era of 2023. And, you're out there on the front lines every day covering it. And I just wish that our leaders, in Tallahassee start to focus on the issues that are of importance to us: housing, safety, gun safety, cannabis world safety.
Just ask you, this is a personal question of mine. So, Republicans always tout that they're pro-business and capitalism. I just want your opinion on the move for Disney having to replace their board. I mean, this is a private entity. It's the fact that DeSantis came in and replaced that whole board with his cronies, just like he did New College. Where do you see this going? Because it's very dangerous. If you can start replacing boards on hospitals and boards everywhere, like school boards, I mean, he's vested in everything. So, I mean, he totally changed Sarasota School District from being a very pro-democratic, more liberal board to a totally four conservatives sitting on a board of 5 members. So do you see him just keeping bulldozing through the state of Florida? Gangbusters, one corporation, one entity at a time?
I think that he's being more circumspect than just bulldozing the entire state. I think number one, I think Disney partly got the governor's attention after with the so-called "Don't Say Gay" bill, and then the response from the CEO of Disney that led to that fire. But I think there were some things with the Disney board that I think had sort of rattled even some state regulators, and that was like Disney had plans to like build a nuclear power plant and stuff like that. Which I think anyone who hears nuclear power, if you were born in the 20th century, your ears are gonna perk up. Yeah. So I think he's being more circumspect than that, but I think they're watching, and I think if there's a group out there that maybe gets his attention, then he'll go after them. But I do know that he does. I'm just basing this because I've covered him on the healthcare side, which is also, you've had to watch why he's covering these things. And he does a lot of research before he decides to go up and tear up a board. Okay. I can't say either way whether it was good or bad that he did it. That's not my place as a reporter.
At least if he does his research and he's methodical and there's some reason behind it, then I mean that actually.
Well, he's methodical. He has his purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, he has his agenda, and listen, once again, gangbusters is gangbusters, and he does have the power. But and listen, Eric, thank you so much for joining us. And I apologize for looking down at my phone for a little bit. Pennsylvania Representative Rob has reached out to me. He wants some advice before he's doing an interview at 9:30. So I want to give him a shout out, and I'm going to trade that call for having him appear in the green room sometime in the future. But
we'd love to have you back.
Absolutely.
Anytime. Always. Nevertheless, I know Dr. Barry's from Ohio and is Michigan. We're always above you guys. Other than that, I would love to join you guys again. This is great.
Listen, it's a Lions Browns Super Bowl, Eric. That literally, they probably would be multi-million chance to win, and we could get that on DraftKings today, probably. So that's funny.
I'd say marijuana will be legalized nationwide before that happens.
that is without question.
I'm just kidding.
See you next week. Thanks.